This is Gittin Pei Daled 84, beginning on 84a, second line. Rabbi, stop. Man gives his wife a get, and with the condition that you marry, so and so, that you marry John. She can't get married. And if she marries, does marry him, then she doesn't leave her second husband. That implies that the condition was valid. But on the other hand, it's a conditional get. So my comfort, what is the Gemara? What the Gemara says, what does this tell you? So when it says she can't get married, does it mean she can't marry anyone, meaning the get is invalid? Or does it mean she can't marry that particular guy? Amar of Nachman, this is what it means. Say low. She can't marry that particular guy. Shema Yomru Neshem Nosni B'matana. Because that's going to kind of give the idea that marriage is casual. You can give your wife away to somebody else, to a particular guy. But if she marries somebody else, why doesn't she need to get divorced? Was it really a good divorce? So the answer is yes, she was a good divorce. And the Mefarshim explain that we want to negate the condition. We want to say that this condition is nonsense. You can't divorce your wife, and you can't give your wife to somebody else in particular. That the get is a valid get. The condition is disregarded altogether. That's why she doesn't have to leave the second guy if she marries him. Mishum zera lo mafkina minay. So Gemara says, is it because, what's the story here? The rabbis are saying because of this concern, we're going to allow her to marry somebody else. Like the get should be invalid. So if the get is invalid, the rabbis can't come along and say, oh, it's fine. Because of this concern we have, the social concern, we're going to allow the get. We're going to allow someone who's really married to the first guy. The get was not valid. We're going to allow her to marry somebody else. So Rav Nachman changes his tune. This is what it means. She can't marry this particular other guy because we don't want people to think that they can just give away their lives to somebody else. And if she marries him, then it's okay. So really technically, Midoraisa, the condition is enforceable. It's a valid condition, and therefore she is allowed to marry only this guy. Right? The rabbis say, don't do it because we don't want marriage to look so casual. But the reality is that if she goes ahead and accepts the terms of this divorce and marries that particular guy, this actually works, so we don't force her to divorce him. Because we don't want to break up the second marriage just because of this rabbinic concern. Rava says, so what are you saying? She can't marry this particular guy, but she can marry somebody else. But then the condition isn't fulfilled. So in other words, Rava's implying that she can't marry John, but she can marry somebody else. But then the condition of the get is not fulfilled. So how is the get valid? You might want to answer, maybe she'll marry John and divorce John and then marry somebody else. And therefore the Tanai was fulfilled. The divorce was effective because she did marry John. Then she divorces John, marries somebody else. And you're saying that this case is like that case in which you argued with Rabbi Yehuda. What is that case? So a person says, I'm making a neder not to sleep today. If I sleep tomorrow, I'm Rabbi Yehuda. Don't sleep today because chances are, or possibility is, but even the chances are that you are going to sleep tomorrow, and then retroactively, your sleeping today will be violation of a neder. Rav Nachman says, Isha, go ahead and sleep today. Don't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. So Rav Nachman here is saying that, um, like, so if your concern is what might happen tomorrow, that you might marry somebody else, then like that's not what Rav Nachman says in the case of the sleeping matter, right? He's saying, don't worry about tomorrow. Like, what happens tomorrow happens tomorrow. Retroactively, you will have violated the matter, but you're not doing anything wrong now. So Rava says, does that? Can you make that comparison? How somebody day kaima? There, it's up to you. Like you presumably have control over whether you're going to sleep. You could, you can like, what does this mean literally? You can prick yourself with a needle, with a thorn all day, right? To keep yourself awake. So you have the ability to keep yourself awake tomorrow. So that's why Rav Nachman there would say, you have to be concerned about what you're going to do tomorrow. Like how, in other words, you can sleep today because tomorrow you can keep yourself awake. You have that power. But here it's up to her. Is it up to her to become divorced? Like, as we well know, the woman doesn't have a lot of power in the divorce proceeding. How is she going to make sure that she gets divorced to the other guy, from the other guy, Ella, the third guy, Ella Marova? So how are we going to interpret the brisa? She can't marry anybody. Not John and not somebody else. Why? Lolo cannot say the specific guy, because we don't want to have that situation where it looks like people can just give their wives away to someone else specifically. Saying, why can't she marry anybody else? Why you can because then the condition of the divorce will not have been fulfilled. So the divorce is never active. Vimni says, and if she did marry, she marries the guy, John, then she doesn't divorce him. Because everything, like the rabbis have a valid concern, but they're not going to interfere in this marriage to prove their point, right? To make their point. Like she actually married the guy, the get is valid. She married the guy, which we don't like, but she married him, so we're not going to make her divorce him or make him divorce her. But if she marries somebody else, then she does have to get divorced because the get is not effective. She didn't fulfill the condition of the divorce. So that kind of explains that. Then we're okay on all counts. Tiny Kavasi Rava, we have specifically a brisa that accords with Rava's explanation. We said she can't marry anybody else. But if she did marry someone else, if she marries the one guy, say she can stay married. But somebody else, say she has to get divorced from him. Okay. Moving on to other crazy conditions for divorce. Son Rabbana, the rabbi's time. Gittin. Man gives his wife a get. Almanash Shatali Lorkia, on condition that you fly, right? You go up to the sky. Or Almanash Terdi Lotom, or you dive down to the deepest part of the sea. Almanash Tivli Kanesh Arba Amos, or you swallow a 4 long reed, right? You become a sword swallower. Or you bring me a reed that's 100 amas long, which is all these conditions are clearly nonsense, they're impossible. Or you walk across the sea. That's not a valid get because the condition is nonsense, and there's no circumstances under which the condition could be fulfilled. So the whole thing is invalid. Ravito and Tema says, because that get like this is a get. And his rule is any condition that's impossible to fulfill, but which he made the condition of the get. He's just kind of torturing her, the But so, in other words, he's just teasing her. He's like, imagine a situation where the woman really wants to divorce, and finally the husband says, fine, here's a divorce, but there's a possible condition. So we're going to disregard the condition. He's only trying to, he's finally giving her the get, but he's trying to make her suffer by believing that it's not even a valid get. So imagine the frustration. Um, but since he's only using the condition to torment her, but he's actually giving her the get, we're going to look at the get as a kosher get, which is a little strange. Amar of Nachman Rav said halacha b'Gittin tema. He rules like in accordance with that. Amar of Nachman Bar Yisach. Masnisi Namidek, or Nachman says we can also infer that from the Mishnah. Katani, as we learn in the Mishnah, kol she'efshar lo l'kaimo b'sofa. Any condition that you could fulfill, and you'd make that condition. So no, that's a good condition of the get. It has to be fulfilled in order for the get to be valid. Yafshar, but if it's the implication is from this Mishnah that if it's an impossible condition tonight, we ignore the Tanai, we ignore the condition, and the get is good. Shmamina. It was a good proof. So they asked, here's a get. You have to eat a ham sandwich in order for this get to be valid. Mao. So what do we say? I mean, physically, it's possible for her to eat a ham sandwich, but halachically, it's impossible. She's not allowed to eat a ham sandwich. Mao, what do we say? Amar Abaye, he. Abaye says the same thing. Just like it's impossible to find 100 amma reed, which is an impossible condition. Eating a ham sandwich is also an impossible condition. Rava says no. Yeah, you could eat it physically. You could eat it. You'll get lashes, but but you could eat a ham sandwich. So it's good to that. So according to Abaye, klal asiyah b'sar chazir, when Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema said klal, that the rule is an impossible. What does he include in the rule? We already listed a bunch of impossible conditions, physically impossible. So what does he mean? The rule is that anything like this is invalid. He meant to include halachically forbidden things as a t'nai. Rava kazeh lemute b'sar chazir. When he says anything that is like this, right? So like this means like physically impossible things, and this is not a physically impossible thing. So they asked, here's your get, but the condition is you have to sleep with John, right? Not that you're not. So before we had the case where you have to marry John. Here it's the case where you have to sleep with John. If she fulfills the condition, harays again, and the get is valid. On condition that you don't sleep with your father or my father, which is clearly a forbidden thing. We don't have to kind of prove it. We assume that condition is fulfilled. She's not going to sleep with her father. Now, what about the case which the Brisa did not say? What if the condition is you have to sleep with your father in order for this get to be valid? According to Abaye, it's okay because that would be excluded from a valid Gittin because this is an impossible thing to do since it's forbidden. Rava Kasha, but according to Rava, why didn't they say that case as being a good get? Because Rava says if it's a halachically forbidden thing, then that's still a valid condition. You could do the sin. You could violate halacha and fulfill the condition if you wish to do so. Rava. But Rava can answer, so Rav said, what did I say before? I said you could eat the ham sandwich, and what would be the consequences? You get lashes. Okay, so that's something that you can take on yourself if you wish to do so. And also the case where on condition that you sleep with so and so, right? Okay, you could do that. She might have to bribe the guy, you might have to pay the guy to sleep with her, but she could fulfill the condition if there's a way to do it. But have it to sleep with your father. Is it up to her to fill the condition? Okay, so she could decide, I'm going to do the sin in order to get my get. But her father like is not going to do it, right? That's how are you going to get the father to participate in this? Um, so let's go back and re-examine Rava's approach to Rabbi Yehuda ben Taim. Rava klal lesuye klal lesuye abu babe. So the condition when Rabbi Yehuda ben Taim says this is the rule, what's he including? He's including the case of where this is a get if you sleep with your father, and kazat alamu tevasar chazir. And when he says an impossible condition like these, right? Like the 100 Amarid. What does it mean? Well, like these? It means things that are physically impossible, but we're not going to exclude things that are halachically forbidden. La Abaye, and according to Abaye, klal the when we have the rule, that's to include the Basar Chazir, the eating the ham sandwich, and Chazal Mude Plani. And when he says like this, the rule, what things that are possible like this, it's to mean like these physically impossible things, but excluding the case where he says, you have unconditional you sleep with so and so. So because that is not an impossible thing, as we said. That's something that you could convince that guy to sleep with you. So it is a possible condition, and that would be a good condition for a get. Meisvei, so they asked, "Arez Gittin." Man says to his wife, "Here's your get. If you eat a ham sandwich, Zara, or if she was a non-Kohen, from a non-Kohen family, or a non-Kohen husband, do this sin, eat truma, right, which you're not allowed to do. Nazira, or if she was a Nazir, on condition that you drink wine, which you're not allowed to do. Again, if she goes ahead and does these things, then it's a good get. If not, then it's not a get. In other words, it's perfectly good. All these things are perfectly good conditions. Eat a ham sandwich, eat truma when you're not allowed, drink wine when you're not allowed. So the Rava, according to Rava, it's fine, because he says, like, even if a condition that involves a sin is a good condition because you can do the sin. But how does Abaye explain this? He says that if it's that a sin is an impossible condition. Abaye answers, "Misavra stivri akali." What? So you think this Brisa agrees with who was it? Um, Ramuda Matema, you think that everybody agrees with him? Hamani, Rabbi, this Brisa, you're right, it disagrees with Ramuda Matema. Okay. The Tabagale de Masna al Mashakasavatarahi. There's another approach we can take. You can't make a nader or a condition on something contrary to what's written in the Torah. If you do a t'nai, a condition on something that is forbidden by the Torah, then that's not a good condition. So what about the ham sandwich? What about the eating truma or the drinking wine? What does this Brisa say to that? When do we say that principle? For example, where it's like something that the person who's making the t'nai is forbidden to do. So, for example, if he says the t'nai is on the condition that I don't support you, you're not allowed to not support her, so that's not a good t'nai. But here, the husband is making the condition that the wife eats the ham sandwich. Well, that's not masna mashakasu Torah for you. It's a little not such a. I think that it's a little odd construction here, but for the person making the condition, there's no sin involved. It's somebody else has to sin. The wife has to eat the ham sandwich. It's 90 day. It's like, yeah, he's making the condition, but why is she eating the sandwich. Why is she eating what's forbidden to her? Because of the tonight. So like he's responsible for this violation of halacha by giving her this forbidden condition to do in order to get what she wants. He's responsible. So we do have, so we can apply the principle that you can't make a condition against what the Torah says. Elam Ravina, so Ravina says, when do we say that a condition against what's written in the Torah is null and void? It's like when you're definitely when it's like Sherek Susanana, the example we used before, where the man says, I'm gonna give you a divorce on condition that I not support you or do anything on the condition that I not give you your support. That's definitely a violation. He has a definite obligation to support his wife, and if he fails to do so, then it's definitely against the Torah. But where he says, um, here's your divorce on condition that you eat a ham sandwich. Do you tell her she has to eat? What he's saying is, he's, as we saw before, people can be very cruel, right? You can torment your wife by saying, sure, I'll give you your divorce if you eat this ham sandwich, right? He's not forcing her to eat the ham sandwich. She has a choice of not to get divorced. So therefore, the condition is technically valid. Okay, so back to the Mishnah, we said that you can't give a get with the condition that you're withholding her ability to marry a particular person. It says, here's your get. You can marry anybody, but the condition is you just can't marry John. Okay, so that's not a valid get because it's not a complete divorce. So Kate said, yes, what's the way around this? How can you kind of make that kind of situation effectively? So you eat Leno, the Mishnah said you'd Leno him and take it back from her and then give it to her again and say, here's your get and you're permitted to anybody, which is of course a valid get. So Montana. So what the Gemara is going to discuss now is, do you actually have to physically take the get back from her, give it to her again, or can you just say, oh, I gave you the get already and here's the new conditions, there's no condition? No, the Mishnah says you have to do it, you have to take back the get and give it again with no condition. Montana, which Tana holds that, Amar Chizkiah, Rav Shimon ben Elazar, he lives Rav Shimon, the Tanya, Brisa, Rav Shimon ben Elazar Omer, in this case, he specifies you have to take back the get and give it to her again. But here's your get, no condition. Rabbi Yochanan says, I feel the tame already. It doesn't have to be according to Rav Shimon ben Elazar. It could be according to Rabbi who doesn't require the re-giving of the get. Dilachon Amar, because your teacher said, meaning Rav Kahana, Rav Kahana said, Shani Hacha, these cases are different. She took the get, like in the case where, like, why would you even accept the get where it's not valid, like where it's not a complete get, you're divorced and can marry anybody but so and so. Why would you even take that? What's the effect of that? That makes her enough of a divorcee that she can't marry a Kohen. And that's why you Okay, so uh, the that kind of partial divorce, if you will, it disqualifies her from marrying a Cohen. So even though she is still married to the first guy, the get was not effective. Um, Later, she can, after that marriage eventually dissolves one way or another, let's say the man dies, she is considered a divorcee regarding marrying a Cohen. But in the case of Reb Shimon, the original divorce is completely invalid and doesn't have any effect on marrying a Kohen. Okay. Okay. So, but in that same case, if you give a get and say um, you can marry anybody except so and so. So ksovo b'socho, if it's written, the Mishnah said in the get itself, right? If it's not a verbal condition, but it's written into the get itself, then the get is completely invalid. Obvious. It seems kind of obvious. Um, it's he's kind of repeating what the Mishnah says. Like the Mishnah only applies to when you wrote that condition into the get document. Pshita, where it says, yeah, no kidding. That's what the Mishnah said. So it's not. That's what the words say. So what are you adding here? So whereas his mouth is saying, I might have thought, Hanimile la'achar haTorah. I remember there's two parts of the get. There's the tokef and the tarif, right? So maybe it only is if the condition is written after the first part was written. So in other words, the main part of the get is written without the condition, without the restriction of a with tarif. But if the condition is written before the tarif is completed, afilu alpan nami pasul, then even like then that get would be valid even with a verbal condition. So Kamash Malan Rav Safra saying no, it's only when it's written. There's no the verbal condition doesn't. We're not implying anything about the verbal condition, is what he's saying. It's specifically only if it's written. For Rava, remember Rava says Rava says no, it's the opposite. He says this idea that the verbal condition, invalid condition, is doesn't make the get invalid. It's only after the tarif is written. If now tarif, but before that, I feel all pendami apostle that invalidates the get, even if it's just verbal. And this is consistent for Rava. Rava lahanu dekasvik ite, because Rava told these get writers, shatku shatuke lebal. Don't let the husband say anything. Don't let him even speak until you finish writing the Torah, because if they insert some verbal restriction before the Torah is written, that would invalidate the get, the written get altogether. And we'll stop here for today.